U.S. presidents who died in office and what happened after. In American history, only 8 sitting presidents of the United States have died in office. Each death was a shocking and unnerving event, raising questions about what happened and what would come next. Whether a president dies of natural causes, an accident, or assassination, it triggers a series of events. It also creates a situation where the individual's ideas, agenda, and goals for the country may either continue or be derailed. No 2 presidential deaths in office have resulted from the exact same circumstances or led to identical outcomes. Each story of how they died and what happened afterward highlights both loss and growth in surprising ways. William Henry Harrison. When he died, April 4, 1841. How he died. William Henry Harrison was both the first U.S. president to die in office and the president with the shortest term. His death occurred 1 month after his inauguration and just over a week after he began feeling ill. Harrison had delivered a 2-hour inaugural address on March 4th without a coat or hat, which some later believed contributed to his demise. Later that month, he was caught in a cold rainstorm, and it was after this event that he fell ill. The exact cause of Harrison's fatal illness remains debated, but doctors at the time treated him for pneumonia of the lower lobe of the right lung, complicated by congestion of the liver. Despite receiving repeated enemas and medications such as opium, his condition worsened, and he passed away in the early morning hours of April 4th. What happened after? Following Harrison's death, a 30-day period of mourning was observed, with public ceremonies and a private funeral. Harrison's body was transported to Ohio for burial. At the time, there was no clear precedent for presidential succession, and Harrison's death highlighted ambiguities in the U.S. Constitution on this matter. Vice President John Tyler faced the choice of either assuming presidential duties until a new election or becoming president for the remainder of Harrison's term. Tyler issued an inaugural address on April 9, took the oath of office on June 6, and moved into the White House, establishing the precedent for presidential succession. He served as president until 1845. Zachary Taylor. When he died, July 9, 1850. How he died. Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States, took office in March 1849 and died 16 months later. Known for his anti-slavery stance, Taylor was embroiled in a contentious relationship with Congress over slavery legislation when he fell ill on July 4, 1850. During an excessively hot day in Washington, D.C., Taylor attended an Independence Day celebration, consuming a bowl of cherries with iced milk and drinking a large amount of water. Shortly afterward, he developed a severe stomach illness, likely caused by cholera, a waterborne disease rampant in the city. After 5 days of severe diarrhea, digestive issues, and dehydration, Taylor passed away on the morning of July 9. What happened after? Conspiracy theories about Taylor's death quickly emerged, while arrangements for his funeral were made for July 23, 1850. Vice President Millard Fillmore was sworn in as the new president on July 10. Fillmore negotiated a compromise with Congress regarding the status of slavery in U.S. territories and newly admitted states. He also established the borders of Texas, signed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, and approved numerous treaties with indigenous Americans as the country expanded westward. Abraham Lincoln. When he died, April 15, 1865. How he died. Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theater with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, on the night of April 14, 1865. Booth entered Lincoln's balcony and fired a single shot into the back of his head. Lincoln was taken across the street to a boarding house, where he remained unconscious until he passed away just after 7 a.m. on April 15. What happened after? Lincoln became the first U.S. president to be assassinated while in office. Even as he lay dying, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton initiated an investigation. Vice President Andrew Johnson was sworn into office within hours of Lincoln's death. James A. Garfield. When he died September 19, 1881. How he died. James A. Garfield served as President of the United States for less than a year, being sworn in on March 4, 1881, and dying later that same year. Garfield was the second U.S. president to be assassinated, and his death was a prolonged ordeal. In July 1881, while on his way to join his family in New Jersey, Garfield was shot by Charles J. Guiteau, who fired 2 bullets into his back. Garfield was taken to the White House, where he endured significant pain and the sweltering summer heat. Inventor Alexander Graham Bell attempted to locate the bullets using a device he designed specifically for that purpose but was unsuccessful. Prior to this, doctors had probed Garfield's torso to find the bullets, likely contributing to the infections that eventually killed him. In early September, Garfield was moved to the New Jersey seashore, where he passed away on September 19. What happened after? Vice President Chester A. Arthur succeeded Garfield and served out the remainder of his term. Although Arthur had previously opposed Garfield's efforts to combat the spoils system, he continued Garfield's cause of civil service reform after becoming president. Guiteau, who was bitter about not receiving a diplomatic post he believed he had earned through the spoils system, was immediately apprehended. Despite being mentally ill, he was tried, convicted of murder, and hanged on June 30, 1882. The nation was shocked and devastated by Lincoln's death, especially with the Civil War having just ended. Lincoln's body was prepared and taken to the Capitol to lie in state before being transported by train to Springfield, Illinois. Mourners lined the train route to pay their respects. The pursuit of Lincoln's assassins was swift. Hundreds were questioned, and 9 individuals were eventually tried and sentenced to death or imprisonment in 1865 and 1867. Booth and another conspirator, David Harold, were tracked to a barn in Virginia. Booth was killed, while Harold surrendered and stood trial. As Lincoln's successor, Johnson undertook Reconstruction in the former Confederate States. A native Southerner, Johnson pardoned many former rebels and opposed securing rights for newly freed enslaved individuals. When Congress reconvened in December 1865, radical Republicans, who sought to implement full civil rights in the South, found Johnson uncooperative. His opposition led to his impeachment in 1868. William McKinley. When he died, September 14, 1901. How he died? 7 months into his second presidential term, William McKinley was shot during a speaking engagement in Buffalo, New York. Anarchist Leon Czolgosz attended the event at the Pan American Exposition on September 6. As McKinley greeted members of the public, Czolgosz shot him twice in the abdomen. McKinley was quickly taken for medical treatment, while Czolgosz was beaten by the crowd. Doctors operated on McKinley, finding one bullet that had ricocheted and caused minimal damage, but they couldn't locate the second bullet. Initially, McKinley seemed to be recovering, but gangrene and infection set in, leading to his death in the early morning of September 14. What happened after? McKinley had pleaded with the crowd to spare Czolgosz, a request that may have saved the assassin's life temporarily. However, Czolgosz was tried, convicted, and executed on October 29, 1901. McKinley's first vice president, Garrett Hobart, had died in 1899 and was replaced by Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt took the oath of office on the day McKinley died. Roosevelt, who served as president until 1909, pursued a more aggressive foreign policy than McKinley. While McKinley had yielded to public opinion on the annexation of the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico, Roosevelt actively sought a larger role in global affairs. His big stick ideology helped establish the United States as a world power. Domestically, Roosevelt focused on conservation and curbing the excesses of big business. Warren G. Harding. When he died, August 2, 1923. How he died? Warren G. Harding, who took office in 1921, was an advocate for minimal governmental interference in business. At the time of his death, he was on a tour of the West Coast during an economic depression. While in California in August 1923, Harding appeared visibly tired. Despite his doctor's advice to rest, Harding maintained his busy schedule. On the evening of August 2, while reading the newspaper in bed, he suddenly twisted, gasped, and collapsed, suffering a fatal heart attack. What happened after? Harding's body was transported back to Washington, D.C., via train and lay in state at the Capitol before being buried in Ohio. Vice President Calvin Coolidge was sworn in on August 3, 1923. He quickly assured the public of his dedication to Harding's policies and the responsibilities of the office. At the time of Harding's death, the extent of corruption in his administration was largely unknown. Even during his West Coast tour, Harding had confided in Herbert Hoover, his Secretary of Commerce, about handling the scandals publicly. The Teapot Dome scandal, involving Harding's Secretary of the Interior Albert Bacon Fall accepting bribes from oil companies, was just one of many issues. Harding's political allies, such as Charles Forbes and Harry Daugherty, were implicated in various financial crimes, including accepting bribes, selling pardons, and other abuses of political office. Franklin D. Roosevelt. When he died, April 12, 1945. How he died? Franklin D. Roosevelt, who led the United States through the Great Depression and most of World War II, won an unprecedented fourth term in 1944. By 1945, his health was failing. In April, he sought rest at his home in Warm Springs, Georgia, accompanied by his rumored lover, Lucy Mercer, and several family members. On April 12, while sitting for a portrait by artist Elizabeth Shumatoff, Roosevelt suddenly complained of a severe headache and collapsed. Doctors were called but could not revive him. Roosevelt had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. He died around 3:30 in the afternoon before Eleanor Roosevelt could reach him from Washington, D.C. What happened after? Roosevelt was beloved by the American public, and his farewell was a multi-day event. His body was transported by train from Georgia to Washington, D.C., where hundreds of thousands gathered to watch his procession to the White House. Eleanor Roosevelt planned his funeral, which preceded his burial in New York. Vice President Harry S. Truman was sworn in on April 12, while the nation was still at war. Truman continued many of Roosevelt's initiatives, including attending the ceremony for the Charter of the United Nations and expanding several New Deal programs. He also made the critical decision to drop 2 atomic bombs on Japan, bringing World War II to an end. John F. Kennedy. When he died, November 22, 1963. How he died. President John F. Kennedy was visiting Dallas, Texas, with his wife, Jacqueline, when he was shot and killed. After a morning of public appearances, the Kennedys were traveling through downtown Dallas in a motorcade as crowds watched and cheered. Suddenly, shots rang out, and 2 bullets struck President Kennedy. Kennedy was rushed to the hospital as a stunned world watched and listened to news reports of the unfolding events. He had been shot in the head and back, and his wounds proved fatal. His death was